So about 60 hours into my first playthrough on Cyberpunk 2077, and in Night City there's a ton of side quests. One of the side quests, which is really far into the game, talks about a menu item called Ribs a la Silverhand.
There's a special on the menu just for samurai fans, Ribs a la Silverhand. Pricey, sure, but you won't stop licking your fingers.
This is the best way for you to have Johnny Silverhand in you without injecting him into your neck. Everyone awake? Now this recipe is entirely based off of the thought process off of his drink, the Johnny Silverhand. So in this case, we are going to take just a few tomatoes. I am using around 2 kilograms worth of tomatoes here. You can honestly use any tomato you want for this. I actually like Roma, but I couldn't find any. But either way, remove the tops of each of these tomatoes. The reason why we're removing the tops first is because we are going to smoke these bad boys. Because yes, if you've played Cyberpunk 2077, Johnny Silverhand is a bit of a smoker. So I got myself a fancy smoking box and some cherry wood that I'm going to be smoking with. The reason why I'm using cherry wood is because in his drink, he does have hints of cherry in his drink. It's a tequila old fashioned. You have to have those cherry flavors. Add your wood chips into your smoke box if you're using a smoke box. Grab yourself an aluminum pan. Now take all of your tomatoes and line these up in the pan, making sure that you do leave about half of that pan space readily available for your smoking box. And this tomato, why is it always just like one tomato that doesn't want to fit? Is that going to work? Are we going to make this happen? Yes, excellent placing. Now since I have a bit of room, I'm also going to add in one whole yellow onion. The reason why I'm adding the yellow onion is to act as a barrier between the tomatoes and the smoke box, but also to give the onion a nice smoky flavor as well. This is just going to increase the overall flavor of our beautiful salsa. Once you have everything locked and loaded with your tomatoes, your onions, and your smoke box, you do need to start smoking those wood chips to get them started. Now again, be careful with this because if you're smoking anything indoors, make sure that your vent is going, or do this outdoors. I couldn't because it's Oregon and it rains all the time. So instead, I did smoke these indoors. I decided to add just a few more chips to help round out how many chips I had, making sure that it was as evenly started as possible. This does take just a few minutes, and once it starts smoking, place this back into your aluminum and move it back over the heat. Now remember, since this is aluminum, you don't want that heat too high, just high enough to make sure that it continues to smoke those wood chips. I had mine around a medium heat. Now this does also have to be wrapped really well, but be careful because it's aluminum and it is hot. And to seal it off, I just used some painter's tape. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do when you're trying to make your own smoking box. Once everything is sealed up, play with the heat just enough to where it is smoking slightly and let this hang out until those tomatoes are ready to go and nice and soft. Now for the rest of the salsa, we're going to need 2 Anaheim chilies, 2 whole jalapenos, 1 head of garlic, 1 whole shallot, and 1 bunch of cilantro. Remove the seeds and the stems from all of your chilies, making sure that you don't really bring too much of that in there. In this case, on the Anaheims, they don't really provide much flavor, but they can be bitter, so I do like to remove the seeds and the insides of these chilies. Whereas with the jalapeno seeds do contain a good amount of heat. Unfortunately, on initial whiffing of the jalapeno, they didn't smell overly spicy, so I made sure I kept all of the seeds with this to make sure it carried some of that spice into the salsa. For the shallot, just remove the peel and give this a rough chop. You don't need to do anything too fancy with the shallot because it's all going to be blended up. With the garlic, make sure you give it a nice Hulk smash. I'm going for around 8 cloves of garlic, so just make sure you trim them, peel them, get these ready to go. You know the drill with garlic. Now grab a piece of aluminum foil and line your sheet tray with it to make your life easy later. Pile on all of your beautiful vegetables and hit this with just a touch of blended oil. You don't need too much oil for this, just enough to kind of coat them. Hit this with black pepper and a good amount of salt, and these are ready to go into the oven to start roasting. We are going to roast these at 450 degrees for around 15 to 20 minutes, just until they start to soften up. Now for the lime juice. We need 100 milliliters worth of, don't you do it, don't you, stop it, really, again? We need 100 milliliters worth of lime juice. So get these rolled out so they're slightly easier to juice, cut them in half, and get these ready to go. Alternatively, you can buy some nicer lime juice, but come on, limes are cheap. Do a fancy flip-de-doo with the lime juice juicer, flip the lime back around because you forgot how to use the fancy juicer, and Hulk squeeze all of the lime juice into your cup. Again, we're using around 100 milliliters worth of lime juice, but your mileage may vary depending on the limes, so just try to get it as close to that as possible, and really adjust for lime juice later. You know, you do you. After around 15 minutes, your vegetables should be done and nice and soft. That's really what you're looking for. Now, these tomatoes have been smoking for around 1 hour. You can see that they are nice and soft after just taking a toothpick or a bamboo skewer and placing it directly into the middle of the tomatoes to make sure that they're soft all the way throughout. Once they are nice and soft, we can finally unveil our smoked tomatoes and onions. This is a mess. but it did work. I smoked everything indoors. Now remove your chips, placing them into the sink so this way you don't catch anything else on fire, and try out some of those onions, just give them a slight taste. See if they are of cherry wood. And yes, they are of cherry wood. Now place all of your tomatoes and onions right on top of the other vegetables just to make your life easy. Grab yourself your not favoritist blender, getting tomato juice in areas that shouldn't belong, and try to smash as much of this as possible into your blender. I added the tomatoes first, followed by the rest of the vegetables just to make sure that there was room, and I was slowly running out of room. This blender holds 64 total ounces and it is slowly filling up. Really, you're just gonna shove the cilantro in there, dude? Come on now. And the lime juice, how much more are you gonna add to this? Make sure you're holding the top on for dear life as it blends, poking it down just to make sure all of the cilantro hits the blades. And now we have to add tequila because it is Johnny Silverhand. I'm adding in 100 milliliters of tequila to start. After taking a swig, now you have to remeasure it. Add your tequila into your salsa, followed by just around 2 grams worth of cumin and a couple heavy pinches of salt and black pepper. You are going to need to season this to taste. You see that line? It's going to explode at some point. After blending, you have this beautifully blended salsa. Make sure you give it a taste, and then this reaction, venga! Hit it with some more tequila because you can, reblend it, and this salsa is ready to go. I wish you guys could smell this. Oh God. Oh yes, so good. After having a moment with your salsa, place these into containers just to make sure it cools down properly, because salsa tastes better the next day. And as you can see by my shirt change, it is the next day and it is time to play with our meat. And no, not any meat. Some pork ribs. I'm using some pork baby back ribs for this, but for those of you who don't eat pork, chicken works just as well, and we're working with meat because Gandalf has showed up. Now after taking your pork out of the packages and rinsing them really well, pat them dry just a touch and then hit this with a good amount of salt. Make sure you do flip these over and season the other side as well, because you really need to season both sides, you can't get away from it. Now flip these back over so the meat side is on the bottom of the tray, and grab your beautifully roasted salsa. Make one of the sexiest pours you can right on top of that pork, slathering it in that salsa. Use your fork to kind of spread it around here and there, and then give it a flip. We want to make sure that we coat both sides of this. You may end up using quite a bit of salsa, but don't worry, that's what we made it for. Just make sure that the ribs are more or less fully coated inside of all of that salsa. Now flip it one more time, making sure the meaty side is face down in your pan in the most roundabout way possible. And now this has to get locked and loaded with some cerveza. I'm using Corona Extra for this. Feel free to use any kind of Mexican lager that you want. I like Corona, so I'm using Corona. Fill this up just until you basically cover the ribs. You don't want to fully submerge the ribs in beer. You do want to have some breathing room, so this way they can slightly braise rather than essentially boil. You're going to use almost a full liter of beer for this, so be prepared to use quite a bit, and there's always a little left over, but the only thing you can do with that is drink it like you drank with the tequila earlier. Now I did top this off with just a bit more salsa, so that way it was just a little extra good. Drop your aluminum foil straight into your ribs, making sure that you make a mess, and then cover this completely, making sure you seal it off as best as possible. Bake this off at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 3.5 to 4 hours. Yes. Now after those 3.5 to 4 hours, remove the ribs from the oven, unveiling the beautiful, tender, delicious juiciness that are these pork ribs. What you're really looking for is whether or not the meat literally falls off the bone. In this case, it just completely fell off the bone, and it was delicious and hot, and I continued to eat it and burned my mouth, but it was worth it. You could see how the bones basically slide out of the meat, and that's really what you're looking for. Now let these hang out in the sauce for about half an hour. After half an hour, rip another chunk off and eat it because you can. Look at whatever Abigail is trying to show you on her phone, and then remove the ribs from the sauce and place them on a sheet tray to relax for about half an hour, and you've summoned Gandalf once again because the meat is here. Give a small portion to Abigail so Gandalf follows her instead, and now we are ready to deal with the... Abigail, what are you doing in the camera? Now we're ready to deal with the sauce. You think we're really going to throw this away? No. Remove the sauce and place this into your sauce pot. Bring this up to a nice boil. We're not trying to reduce it, we just want to bring it back up to a boil. After boiling, place this into a metal container, which is very stupid because duh, metal conducts heat very well. Burn your fingers slightly and place this over onto the stove. Now grab yourself one more white onion and give this a small dice. Now back over on your stove, add in a nice dab of butter to the pot you boiled the juices in, add in your fully diced onion into this, and saute up all of that onion with the butter in the juices of the pork. Now take 370 grams worth of jasmine long grain rice and add this to your onions. Yes, we are going to be making rice with those onions and with that pork stock. After toasting up the rice, add in 500 milliliters worth of your pork juices directly onto the rice, and you are going to need more liquid intermittently throughout this cooking process. I used a total of around 900 milliliters worth of liquid. After you bring this to a simmer, throw a lid on it, let it steam for around 5 or 6 minutes. Make sure you do stir this occasionally, but not stir it aggressively like you're making a risotto, because since you are using the stock to cook the rice, it can stick to the bottom, so just make sure you pay attention to it. After around 15 to 20 minutes of cooking, let it steam with the lid on after seasoning, then grab one full bunch of cilantro and give it a nice chop. This cilantro is going to go directly into this rice once it's fully chopped up to give it a really nice flavor. We're also going to hit this with one whole lime worth of lime juice. Bring both your cilantro and your lime over to your rice, place those directly in and fold in all of that good to make this a salsa-y, porky rice stock thing. Let this hang out for just a few minutes while we deal with the ribs, because we are not quite done with those yet. These ribs are around room temperature now after they've been hanging out. Cut them into your portion size of choice, place them onto a sheet tray, re-season these because I did notice that they needed a touch more salt. Hit this with some of your leftover pork stock that you had saved. Make sure you do save it, it's important. And broil these for around 5 or 6 minutes to get some color on those ribs. That's all you're looking for, you know? A little G-Bad on there. Once you have some G-Bad, grab yourself around 50 grams worth of brown sugar and a few heavy sprinklings of cayenne, coat your ribs with that goodness, and then torch the sucker. Yes, because it's Johnny Silverhand. We gotta torch it. Be careful with the brown sugar because it doesn't caramelize as well as granulated sugar, so you can burn it very easily, but it's gonna be okay. After you've slightly burnt the sugar, grab yourself a plate, load it up with your beautifully made rice, hit it with a half rack of ribs, serve it with some of that really amazing smoked salsa, and there it is, the ribs a la Silverhand from Cyberpunk 2077 and some of that beautifully smoked salsa. I don't know how we get anything done around here. Mike? No more unknown for you. They're gonna copyright strike me for you singing in the background. There it is, guys, the ribs a la Silverhand. This came from a side quest in Cyberpunk 2077. It isn't very well known, but as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to try to make my rendition of it. And the inspiration came from Johnny Silverhand's drink, which has tequila in it, it has cerveza in it, it has all these chilies and flavors in it. Stop it. And with the smokiness just being super intense with this, it gives you that beautiful aroma and smell of that tequila old fashioned that I had for my birthday, which I probably should have made for you guys. But there it is, we're gonna just dive into this and I'm gonna have to set this down somehow. Cheers, look at there's salsa on the floor now. That's okay. Oh my God, it's so tender. It's so good. Look at the pork fat. Look at it, enjoy that. Oh, that's so good. I don't know where to go. I don't want to eat this on camera. It's incredibly tender from that salsa. The salsa really gave it a ton of flavor during the braising process. And it's smoky. It has a nice spice to it. Then with the caramelization of the brown sugar and the cayenne, it just pulls everything together. And then of course, with that rice, using the braising liquid for your rice, oh, that rice is so good. I'm gonna leave again. I should've got more beer. I have to go sit down and eat this because I'm having a moment. And you should have a moment checking out my merch down below. My name is Chefpk. Get subscribed. Remember, keep playing with your food.
I don't think you're playing with your food right now.
No, I play with my food all day. Oh.